These are wrenches?
These are wrenches.
See, I'm a noob, okay?
It might be a little slow building the Camaro.
We're here in Montana, home of Toolbox Widget, a veteran and woman-owned business where they put mechanics first. This is John, the owner and CEO of the company. Would you mind telling everybody what you do and how you're going to be able to help me figure out what the heck I'm doing?
All right, so I'm an aircraft mechanic formerly and a helicopter pilot, combat veteran, and so on. When I was working as an aircraft mechanic, I realized there wasn't a great way to organize tools, so I ended up developing my own system called Toolbox Widget. Now we're in year 5. We're in 4 or 5 countries around the world. We're just doing amazing at it because the product is so good, and that's because we actually put mechanics first, and we listen to feedback, we incorporate that feedback into our product, and it shows, and the customers love it. When we talk about tools, we have SAE, which is imperial, which is fractions. When we think inches, we think a 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, and so on. That is called SAE, right? And then it's also called imperial. And then on the other hand, we have metric, which is become the more dominant one lately in the last 15 years. But metric is 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 20 millimeter, anything with millimeter, right? It's the metric system.
Okay.
Right? We all learned about the metric system a little bit. But commonly enough, America is one of the only countries that use imperial anymore. But depending, like when you're working on your Camaro, right?
Yes.
When you're working on a Camaro, you're going to mainly see nothing but SAE imperial. You'll be doing fractions, 3/8, 1/2 inch, unless you find a newer component that somebody's made that might be made with millimeter nuts and bolts, metric system, right? But when you look at the transformation, here's a good example. I used to work on American-made aircraft. However, the American-made aircraft had SAE and imperial, but some of the components would come from overseas and they would be made in metric. So
Confusing.
So I had to have SAE and metric, right?
Okay.
So a better way to say that, if you want to wrench on anything as of today, like you might not just wrench on your Camaro, you might wrench on your new car.
Yeah.
You basically need both. You need SAE and metric, period.
So I have a 2006 Chevy, and then my husband has a
Metric.
2005 Ford.
The majority of it's metric.
All right.
Majority, right? You'll find, so again, who makes the components? Remember, cars, aircraft, helicopters, they're a conglomerate of many people and many different companies making components and coming together and being assembled. So again, if somebody's making something in Mexico, it's probably made in metric.
Okay.
And they import it and it gets final assembly in the US. So some of your parts are going to be SAE fractions. Some of it's going to be in millimeters. So you need both.
Do I need to get a full set of everything? Like what? Because I see so many people with toolboxes filled with stuff. I can't just go out.
Those are guys who are turning wrenches daily.
Okay.
Right? So you don't need that. And the way I talk to a lot of newer mechanics, it's progress, not perfection. It's like a skill set, right? You're not going to be great when you go to the gym for the first time, when you work on your first vehicle, when you try to walk as a baby for the first time. It's about progress, not perfection. You're not going to go from not having a toolbox to having a $100,000 setup overnight, right? And some of these guys you see on YouTube, I mean, I was a professional aircraft mechanic and I own a tool organization company and they got better tools than I do. I mean, some of these, I know guys that have $100,000 tool setups. I mean, it's mind blowing.
I'm going to start out with a baby tool set.
Well, but when we talk about it, they also make their money with those tools, right?
Okay.
So it'd be no different if you own a gym, right? And you want your gym to be the best. You want people to talk about your gym. You want your gym to be reliable. You want the equipment to be reliable. It's no different for a professional mechanic. So this is what I mean by SAE imperial. We have a fraction. We have a 13/16. We have a 5/8, right? We have an 11/16. All these are fractions.
Okay, so they're written.
They're written right on.
So they're written on these are wrenches?
These are wrenches.
See, I'm a noob, okay?
It might be a little slow building the Camaro. All right, maybe we should start off.
This is why I need help.
Most bolts, when you turn them to the left,
lefty loosey, ready tight. Does it change between SAE and metric?
No,
Okay.
Every once in a while you'll find a reverse threaded something, but very rarely. The only difference is we go by different standards, right? Like, here's a good example. A shoe made in Malaysia that says size 10 versus a shoe made in America that says size 10. They're not going to line up perfectly.
Okay.
because they have different standards, right? Different systems, right? So all we're doing is comparing two different standards with, hey, we know when we say 13/16, it's going to be exactly 13/16 of an inch. Remember?
Of an inch.
Right?
Okay.
SAE is inches.
Okay.
Right. So when we measure this, if you were to measure perfectly in this opening, we're going to get a 13/16, or we're going to get exactly a 5/8 opening.
Of an
right?
inch.
Of an inch.
Okay.
Right. Or an inch, or 2 inches, or 3 inches. I mean, I'm sure some of the guys that work on trains, they're dealing with wrenches that are
Massive.
3, 4, 5, 6 inches wide, or even bigger. And when you talk about stuff when you're working on your car, you're going to have a smaller set of tools, smaller set, right?
Yeah.
Like dealing with smaller bolts and nuts. If you go to work on a semi, you go to work on a train, you go to work on a big giant Boeing aircraft, you're going to have a much bigger set of tools, right? Because some of your bolts and some of these things, could be massive, right? So we have SAE, and then to give you an idea, so here's a metric socket. See how it says 12 millimeter?
Oh, so it goes 12 millimeter versus on this one, it's 5/8.
Yeah, so remember, SAE's fractions.
Okay.
Metrics do not have fractions.
Okay.
They do. You will every once in a while find a 5.5, but it's a decimal system, right? So you got 5.5, 6 millimeter, 6.5.
So if this one was metric, it would say something millimeter.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they just say 10. So one of the other things some of the tool companies do to identify this, when you're comparing sockets, let me see what I got here. So every once in a while, not always, they'll put this dash line system with metrics, and then SAE they won't. This is not a good example, but SAE would be solid, then you have a dash system. You'll learn all this. This is stuff when you start picking up. Let's come back to the wrenches. So we have a typical style old school wrench.
Okay.
Right? This is called the open in, box in.
Box in.
Closed in.
Closed in.
I'll just make
Okay.
it easy for you. Closed in, open in.
Okay.
Right? So this one, you put it on the, put your finger out. You put it on the bolt, you turn it. Then you got to pull it off, do it again, right?
Okay.
Right? It's non-ratcheting. It's solid, right? But
Yeah.
when you compare this style, this is a ratcheting wrench, right? You put that on, and you can actually, you turn it, come back. Turn it, come back, right? So you don't have to actually remove the wrench every time.
So this has a liner. I don't know if you guys
Yep.
can see it, but it has a liner on the inside, which this, as you said,
Yep.
it turns. It ratchets.
Yep. So no different than a ratchet, right? So when you do a socket, how you can do this,
Okay.
that's the same concept.
That's cool.
Bunch of little ball bearings and other little things in there, and teeth and gears, and allow you to do that one way. So if you're tightening something, you want to go to the, let's say we want to go to the right, right? Right, we're tightening to the right.
Yes.
Right.
So when you're tight, okay, to the right.
But now with this one, some of them have a little switch you can flip. This one, to go the other direction, you would just pull it off and flip it. Now it's ratcheting the other way.
Okay.
Unlike where a actual ratchet has a switch to reverse the direction.
That's cool. So you guys can see that there's a switch in there. I've used tools, but I didn't really understand that that's what I was doing.
So we have ratcheting, but then, again, we're talking very basics. We have a lot of specialty tools, a lot of different style wrenches. You'd be surprised how many different wrench styles you can buy, but basically you have the standard, right?
Okay.
Non-ratcheting. Then you have ratcheting, right? Same thing, it just has gears in it. And then we also have what we call stubby wrenches. So if these were the same size, they're not, but let's pretend the same size. These openings would be the same size. They fit the same bolt or nut. It's just you have a mini version of it to get you in a much tighter little spot. So if you're coming down here to work on this bolt and there's only this much opening,
Yeah.
you could get your wrench in here, but then you can't turn it. So this is meant to go in super small, tight places.
Got it.
Right. So and wrenches are basic, right? It's it's a fulcrum style. The other thing too is, just to understand how a wrench works. If you go to put this on a bolt, you're going to have way less force with this short guy versus this, because it's a fulcrum system.
The length,
right?
you have more power when it's longer.
Yeah, of course, you have more power here.
Got it.
So when you hold all the way out to the end of the wrench with this distance, you have way more power versus something like a stubby wrench, right?
Got it.
You have some big companies out there, super high quality tools that are super expensive. And you also got on the far end of the other spectrum, super cheap tools like Harbor Freight. So depending on what you're doing, you don't need to go out and spend $10,000 on tools. If you're in there, if you're building a Camaro, you're getting in your toolbox once a week, once a month, whatever, you don't need to go out and spend a monstrous amount of money. But you also don't want the cheapest tool. So when you're doing the job that it breaks, it rounds off a nut or a bolt. So you want a mid-grade quality tool.
Okay.
Again, so if you're going to start out buying basic tools, you want to at least, in my opinion, you want to buy a ratcheting set.
A ratcheting set.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about real quick. Gear wrench is a cheaper medium grade tool option.
Okay.
Right. So if you're going to buy something, you want it to last for your home use. Gear wrench is like really good for home use, and they're decent use for professional mechanics. Right. So this is a good overall wrench that you might even find in professional mechanics, and you will find them in the home. Right. So write that down. Gear wrench.
Gear.
One word. Gear wrench.
Gear wrench.
Yeah, and some other ones too. While we're just talking, OLSA, OLSA, they're a competitor of ours in the tool organization, but they make great tools.
Okay.
And for medium, let's talk about. We're in the medium cost category.
Okay,
so
which is where I would be.
So we're getting medium grade tools, which is perfect for you.
Mm-hmm.
So Craftsman still, Craftsman, they used to be American made. Now they're made in China. They still make a medium to low grade tool, which is still great for you.
Okay.
Right. So Craftsman, there's a ton of them out there. They even have websites. If you Google, different tool companies, different wrenches, different, they'll pop up everywhere.
Well, someone mentioned I could potentially go to like an estate sale or something.
Well, you can do garages, but the only problem with we go to garages and stuff, you might get a mixed set, you might get something missing.
In which I wouldn't know if something's missing.
Well, and when you get with that missing tool will be the one you need. It will be, right?
Yeah, that would be me.
So chances are if that person lost it, it was probably one of their more used wrenches, right?
Oh.
So
okay.
But again, like Gear Wrench sells sets, also sells tool sets, Craftsman sells sets. I mean, you can go right now to Lowe's and go to Craftsman and pick up a set. When you're starting to turn and actually build a car, again, you want that medium grade quality, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right, because rounding like some of your cheaper stuff, like let's talk about right here. Let's pretend you're using, we'll just call this a 1 inch for these numbers. You go to put this on and you're turning that nut or that bolt head, hopefully the nut. But if you're turning it, if this lets loose at all, it's going to turn a little bit. Or if you have the wrong size, and it's going to round that bolt head out. So now you got to
strip it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Right. So having a higher quality metal is a little better, because if you strip out a tool, no offense, but you being a newer mechanic, it might be very extremely difficult for you to remove that strip bolt.
Just a little.
Right. Yeah. They make tools for it, and there's ways to get around it, with vice grips and so on, but heat and other things, but that's things you don't want to really adventure into yet.
Okay.
Right. So again, medium grade quality tools. I mean, if you can afford super high quality tools, buy them. But realistically, most people don't want to go and drop $10,000, right? So
or can they?
right? So and again, medium grade is going to be what I think is good for you. Like another cheaper medium grade tool is Titan tools.
Titan.
Yeah, you can find them, and everybody talks crap about Titan, because they're found in AutoZone and O'Reilly's and all that. I personally have used Titan tools. I know them personally. I'm not paid by them in any way. I'm not affiliated with them, but I'm telling you, they have a medium grade tool for a cheaper price. Another thing we'll talk about real quick is warranty.
Oh.
Right. So, find something with a decent warranty. Hopefully we at Toolbox Widget, we give an unquestionable lifetime warranty. Even if you mess it up, we'll take care of you.
Okay.
Because it's mechanics first, right? So make sure you get something with a decent warranty, right? Meaning when you're ratcheting something, maybe the bearing inside or the gears may be locked up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you want to be able to exchange that. I think OLSA, and again, I don't know, I think OLSA has a pretty good warranty policy. So
Okay. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So, all right. So wrenches. Super easy. Start with a ratcheting set. Get an SAE metric set. Right.
So a full set of each.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes you can buy them where it's one set of SAE and metric, or sometimes you buy SAE and metric separate.
So I'll just have to look and see what they have.
We'll help you.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I need a lot of help. Thank you for watching part 1, Intro to Tools. Stay tuned next week where we dive into sockets.